Okay, good morning. I'm Councillor Dave Ashmore. I'm the Cabinet Member for Environmental Services, and I've just got to read off some housekeeping information. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery. Well, all of you. By the stairwells, don't attempt to use the lifts, and please assemble at the turn-in circle at the end of King Henry Street, past the University's Park building. And in order to comply with the Guildhall Trust Fire Marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. I've got to draw everyone's attention to the fact this meeting is live streamed, and please switch off the microphone when you've finished speaking, please. I've got members of the press and public are permitted to record the meeting on the understanding it doesn't disrupt the meeting nor records those stating explicitly they do not wish to be recorded, but I can't see any today. And we've all read the reports here, so if officers can just highlight any developments that have occurred and just give a general overview of it. Thank you very much. So into the actual agenda here. Apologies, I believe we've received from Councillor Bosher. Number 2, any declarations of members' interests? I have none. No? No interest? Okay. Also, I'm supposed to have done introductions, so just to keep it compliant, I said I've introduced myself. If I go that way around, why not?
Thank you. It's Councillor George Madge for the Paulsgrove Ward.
Welcome, George, and it's your first time since your appointment, so welcome.
Dave Emmett, Head of Environmental Services.
I'm Colette Hill, Assistant Director of Neighbourhood Services.
I'm Ashley Moore. I'm a Project Manager in the Waste Management team.
Asghar Shah, Councillor for Cowsham and Wimmering.
Richard Lee, Assistant Director, Culture, Leisure and Regulatory Services.
And Jane Didino, Local Democracy Officer.
Thank you very much, and welcome all. So we go to the first report on here, and it's the 2023 Annual Status Report of Air Quality. I believe that's why you're here, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, no changes to the report, but I will summarise some of the key findings of the report. As you correctly say, this is the information report on the Annual Status Report of Air Quality 2023. It's important to recognise that the 2023 report actually reports upon the 2022 data set. The report neither seeks to provide information on the causes of pollution, nor does it try and present explanations for what needs to be undertaken to solve any air quality problems we have within Portsmouth. The actual ASR does report to a certain degree on those elements, but the report in front of you does not. It's important to highlight first and foremost that the annual status report was required by the government on the 30th of June 2023, so we are late in publishing the report. The report itself has been uploaded to DEFRA, and that was carried out on the 30th of November. We have reported this year in a more timely manner than we did last year, and hopefully next year we will meet the deadline as prescribed. The report itself, the ASR, contains a huge amount of data. The 2022 report was around about 250 pages long, but because of a slight change in the arrangements and the comments of DEFRA last year, the 2023 report now extends to 350 or so pages. So it's a really comprehensive presentation of the 2022 data. A quick update on the history. We currently have around about 230 nitrogen dioxide diffusion tube locations. We have 5 continuous monitoring stations. We have a new station which has a full year of data for 2022 in Alfred Road, and that's there to help assess the impact of the clean air zone. All our continuous monitoring stations monitor nitrogen dioxide, particulates, PM10 and PM2.5. not by way of an excuse, but to identify the resources that we have in service. It has been one FTE for many years. We have a new support officer, and that's the reason why we hope, with the additional information that DEFRA is seeking from us, that we will be able to meet the deadline as prescribed next year. It's also important to say that alongside the ASR, we are doing quarterly reporting to DEFRA each year. So they have already received up to sort of August, September this year of our raw data for their consideration with respect to the performance of the CAS. The data itself, I won't go into huge amounts of detail, but it is worth reminding ourselves, it seems a long time ago, perhaps to some, but COVID was with us in 2020 and 2021, and therefore when we look at the data over a period of 5 years, we've got to be mindful of the restrictions that were in place during that time and the impact of those restrictions on pollution levels. Therefore, I think it is fair to say, in a very short summary, that in the long term, when we consider a 5-year trend, the levels of pollution have improved, and I'm talking particularly around nitrogen dioxide. However, if we look at a shorter term, 2020, 21, 22, then we can see that the air quality has declined, got worse, but we've got to remember the impact of the restrictions during those first 2 years. The primary areas of concern in Portsmouth remain within the CAS itself. There are 2 locations in Alfred Road. Alfred Road might be familiar to some. It is roughly from the northern dockyard entrance to the top of Queen Street, around about 250 metres long. We have 2 monitoring locations for nitrogen dioxide and the continuous monitoring station in that location, and both are reporting exceedances of the national air quality objectives. The other 2 are within Market Way and Hope Street, and they are all within the geographical location of the CAS and are subject to the ministerial directions which were served upon us previously. It's worth talking about the National Air Quality Objective Standards very briefly. The legislation which looks at those standards talks about sensitive receptors, and these are defined within the technical guidance as schools, hospitals and homes, so locations where the public need to be and perhaps have no alternative but to be. There are also some other standards, the Air Quality Standards Regulations 2010, and that looks at areas, it has the same objective standard in the annual average of 40 micrograms per metre cubed, but it looks at areas where the public have access. And if you look at Alfred Road in particular, there are no homes, hospitals or schools, but that is a cycleway and there is a pedestrian pavement. And that is the reason why they are being included within the ASR, and they are still a focus of attention for Portsmouth City Council. It's worth highlighting just the PM10 and PM2.5 levels. They are not in exceedance of the objective standards. Section 6, if you have a minute, is worth reading through because it is the 1-minute guide. Section 7 is a reminder of the impact of COVID, and of course that pollution is not only caused by traffic, but there are other types of pollution. It's a multifaceted problem: background pollution, transboundary pollution, etc. and so on. That's the summary of the report. Very happy to take any questions.
Oh, thank you, Ed. First of all, any questions or comments from the members? Sure.
Yeah, just the report is not submitted as yet. I mean, it's late.
We're talking the ASR reported to DEFRA.
Yeah.
It was late. It was due on the 30th of June, and we published it on the 30th of November.
So was there any reason it wasn't submitted according to the time?
It was mainly down to the resources that we had available and the additional requirements of the government, not only in presenting a more detailed representation of the data set. I made reference to the length of these reports, now spanning some 350 pages. But on top of that, the same staffing resource we have has now got new requirements to report upon the CAS in a quarterly format. So there's a huge amount of pressure on the small resource that we have, and that has taken time. We've alleviated that somewhat. As I said, we've got a support officer now in place, and we're very hopeful. We are starting this process again now. So at the end of December, we'll be pulling the 2023 data together, and we have 6 months until June to pull that together, write the report, and submit it to the government. And I'm very hopeful that it will be on time in 2024.
So was this recognized in the beginning of the year?
Yes.
And was there any action taken at that time or no?
Yes. What we have to do is arrange funding for new staff. That funding took a while to be secured. Then we had to obviously recruit that member of staff, and all that took a bit of time. Unfortunately, that officer has now left us, the support officer. However, we have a patch in place whilst we recruit to that position again, and I'm very hopeful that the patch will ensure that we can analyse the data set appropriately. It's worth saying, if you have 230 sites, that's an awful lot of work on the street side to deploy the tubes, to recover the tubes, to send those tubes off in an appropriate manner to the necessary labs for analysis, and then to look at the data in its returns. It's a huge, mammoth task every month that we do this.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks for that. As always, Rich, a comprehensive report. And I think you've touched on it there, that the struggle it is on, with the resource you've got, and the fact we've got more measuring sites out there as well. So while the data is better than it's ever been, it does need collating more. So obviously that's a strain on time. But as you say, there are things in place to get that. So I think what I'm getting on this is that overall, most of the place we're in the right trajectory, getting better air quality. But obviously that Alfred Road place is still a concern. It's still an exceedance. But I think it's also be remiss of me not to point out that it was also an exceedance when we were in the lockdown, wasn't it? When there was no one going out and hardly anyone driving. So it's not something that's got an easy solution to it. It's not something that we can understand exactly what's going on. But as I say, this is an information report, and we've got more data than ever before on it. So thank you very much, Rich, for all your work, and all the people that have contributed to this. I know how difficult it must be, but thank you very much for the report. And yeah, the recommendation is to note the report, which we do. Thank you. So if I go on to the next item, then that's give it its official title, the Waste Collection Service Transfer and Changes to the Garden Waste Collection Service. Over to you.
Thanks, Chair. I'll be presenting the report today. So the purpose of the report is to update the Cabinet member on the progress of work to transfer and mobilise the waste collection service. There are 3 recommendations on the report. I won't read those out, but obviously they're in the report. I will just run through some highlights and some background to the report. So on the 21st of June 22, the Cabinet took the decision to bring the waste collection service in-house. That kicked off multiple work streams to deliver that service in-house, which will be undertaken from the 1st of April 24 in-house by PCC. And there's been a number of significant milestones already reached on that journey to bring the service in. I thought it would just be worth me highlighting some of the work streams that are underway to bring kind of one of our biggest strategic services back in council operation. So we have already procured a new fleet of 21 bin lorries. Those are due to arrive with us in March. In addition to that, we've procured a new repair and maintenance contract for those vehicles and our current fleet of food waste trucks, which will transfer back to the council from BIFA. The winning tenderer for this was Dennis Eagle. We've already procured a fully integrated new IT system, so that's a customer portal through to all the back office functions, including kind of vehicle CCTV cameras and in-cab devices, which have all the route mapping in them. The winning tenderer who is implementing that system currently is Bartec, and in addition to that, we've also had to buy numerous additional modules from the Pay 360, which is how we process payments at the council for the garden waste. We're in the process of procuring a new fleet management system. We're in the process of procuring a new fuel supplier, which will be HVO fuel. We're in the process of procuring a new tyre contractor. We've already procured our new uniform, and the winning tender for this was SMI. They're in the process of producing our new uniform, fully PCC branded, with all the packs ready for the staff, and they should be with us in March. We're in the process of producing risk assessments, safe systems of work, inductions, crew training, staff handbooks for all the crew that will come over to PCC. Work is underway to expand and refurbish the current depot site. The Biffa depot is a PCC asset and will come back to the council, but it needs refurbishment and will need extending in preparation for our future increased recycling, which we hope to deliver in the next couple of years in the city. And of course, one of the biggest pieces of work is the 2P work to bring that current Biffa workforce over to PCC. So that's all underway, and we're currently building those staff into Fusion. The last two recommendations in the report were linked specifically to the Garden Waste Club, and I thought it was just worth highlighting some information on that service. So garden waste collections are currently a separate subscription-based service run wholly by Biffa, and this was through a variation to the current waste collection contract, and the variation was signed in 2013. And this is what we term the Biffa Green Waste Club. A subscription-based garden waste collection service will be offered by PCC from the 1st of April. That's the date we will run all the waste collections across the city. And officers have been exploring with Biffa the transfer of that service to PCC in a way that ensures service continuity and no disruption to the residents who subscribe to the current service. We've now agreed a pragmatic approach with Biffa and are working on joint communications plan to be able to communicate this transfer to customers, and that will include effectively buying and retaining all current bins at those residents' properties, so it's a kind of smooth transition. The Green Waste Club brand is owned and operated, it's a Biffa brand, and as such we have designed a new PCC garden waste brand, which is going to be called Leaf It Out, and you can see the proposed branding, or the actual branding, in the report, and that will launch on the 1st of April, and we've already had some early comms which have been issued in flagship to sort of prepare our residents for the transfer. The pricing structure will slightly alter and will stay the same for all new and existing customers, and there's an indicative price structure, sort of new price structure shown in the report. That's everything. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dave. Any questions or comments from members? Shah?
Just a couple of points to raise. Waste in-house, the benefits. Will there be any new employees? And is there any financial gain for the PCC to bring it in-house? Thank you.
So in terms of new employees, not currently. The current workforce will transfer into PCC as it is. So all current Biffa staff that are located at the depot will have a role at PCC. So there will be the full current Biffa structure has been mapped into the PCC structure. So those roles will transfer across. There may be some future additional staff coming, but that will only be when we increase the recycling services, which is linked to another report, but that will be later down the line. In terms of benefits, in terms of any savings or benefits, the original report in 22 looked at a range of costs associated with the service, because we can't compare what the in-house service looks like against the current service, because that service was coming to the end on the 31st of March next year. So what we did is compare a in-house service against a potential new contracted service, and there was a range of costs associated with that service, and the in-house was within that range of costs for a potential new contract. In terms of, and we did that via soft market bids from the industry. So we asked the industry to provide a soft market bid, what they think it would look like to offer us a new contract for the 1st of April 24, and that's what we compared the in-house service against. In terms of other benefits, there would, of course, it allows the council to have more control over the service, and obviously offers better benefits for staff. So the PCC terms and conditions are currently more favourable than the BIFA terms and conditions, particularly around pensions and kind of sick pay and holiday entitlements.
Okay, any question?
I mean, potentially I have an interest, but not really much of an interest in the fact that I use the service already from BIFA. Because when I moved into my new house, I had about 3 tons of garden waste to get rid of, if you remember, Dave. So I actually signed up to the scheme, which is good. It's a good scheme. It works really well. For once, I have no complaints about something, which is good. It's always consistent. It's always good. And unlike the PCC bin service, you don't have to leave them right on the edge, which is nice. They use their brains to come and pick it up, which is good. But so obviously I was trying to just understand in what you just said then is, so does this cost us money? Is this a net cost to us, is it? Or is it a kind of, does it balance itself out over the subscription costs?
In terms of the garden waste, the income we receive from the garden waste will cover the cost, so that doesn't, the income from the garden waste doesn't cover the cost of the rest of the service, but that's never been the case. But in terms of running the garden waste subscription, the income received from paying residents will cover the cost of running that element of the service, yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's what I was trying to clarify. So so we're not actually losing any money by taking it in. We're kind of balancing it out, but having the control over it whilst retaining staff and giving them better benefits.
Yeah, I mean, when we looked at the cost, it was quite a difficult comparison, because the current contract was a very favourable contract. So the next time we went out to procurement, it was always going to be more expensive, inflation and everything that's happened within the world. So all we could do is look into the future and ask for a number of providers to basically provide us soft market bids to inform us. Those soft market bids provided a range of costs, and the in-house service was in that range of costs. So it's difficult to say, because we haven't got an exact comparison of a future contract to compare the in-house service against. But what we can say is, that the costs of bringing it in were within that range.
No, I think anything to bring more work in-house is a good thing. I'm fully supportive of that. In relation to the delegated authority for future price increases, during the report it says in line with inflation. Obviously, it doesn't mention that within the decision. I'm not sure if anyone here can answer that in the sense of, are you asking for delegated authority in relation to in line with inflation increases, or can the delegated authority make any form of increase they want under consultation? I'm protecting you here, Dave. No skin off my nose.
It does go beyond inflation, Councillor Madgwick. So yeah, it would be for the administration and the delegated authority in consultation with Section 151 and Cabinet member to make that price increase. So
that's fine. So then, in my opinion, Dave, and obviously you're the boss, in my opinion, I wouldn't take that recommendation on 2.3, because I think transparency is always a better form of method. If it's stating in the report that it's in line with inflation, that kind of gives you a set percentage every year. But if there is ambiguity in relation to in line with inflation, they could actually put it up to whatever they chose to under consultation. I respect with you guys, but with all due respect, I think it's always worth, although it's a very minor thing, I think it's always worth having that conversation in a public platform like we are today to give any future oppositions the chance. And I don't think it will be any hindrance to our service, because obviously it'll only take a quick meeting like this just to look at the new charges each year. I don't know what Councillor Shah thinks about that, and ultimately it is your decision, but I just think that that kind of decision would be better made in a public realm rather than behind a door. Does that make sense? I mean, as I say, I don't think it's a real bad thing. I just like transparency, really, and I think for the 2 minutes it would take to bring it to a meeting every now and then, I don't think it's too much of an issue.
I get where you're coming from, Councillor Magic there. I think if we just insert, you know, inflation in it, I think it might bind the hands of anything in the future if there's any unforeseen circumstances. So I think you're right. We don't want to just start pushing the prices up for whatever, but we are, as it will be in in-house services, am I right? The council cannot just put prices up to get more money. We're not allowed to do that. We can only do things to cover our own costs. So I don't think there's a risk of it going up, and I've got...
It was just to say that the income increase would go through the budget setting process, and then the budget put to full council. So
there would be a public... It would be subject to scrutiny.
Yeah, I don't think it's a real massive issue. It's just to say I prefer transparency, and if it's taken away from that, the ability for opposition to scrutinise it, then, yeah, that's all.
In the past, we've used it as one of whoever the administration is, an opportunity to, you know, when we're doing savings and things. So we've put it through, but that would go through full council. When BIFA have done it currently, they're only allowed to increase it by their cost, which is all we're seeking in the delegation. But I think that there is opportunity for the council through its budget setting process to increase their income if they wanted to. We're not recommending that. That would be a separate thing. This would just be to ensure that the costs of the service, if they go up, if fuel goes up, for example, those sorts of things. So that's what we're seeking for delegation for here. I think if we were saying, oh, can we put it up by £20 a year, that would be more of something we put through the budget process.
So you would get an early sight of it, and you would get a chance to say what's going on here. But obviously, that would be something we discuss. I mean, we have regular Oppo briefings and stuff like that, so it would come to it. But yeah, I think if we were to insert just that bit about inflation, I think it might bind future regulations, but we will have a public scrutiny
just to
about
confirm, it's not. I'm not suggesting insert that. It's already inserted in the report. So someone's already put that in the report that it's going to be in line with inflation. That's why I queried it. So maybe it should be removed from the report if that's not what is going to be suggested.
But no, I don't think it should be removed from the report. It's been there. It's on there. Obviously, as I say, because that would be one of the reasons. But as Coletta said, there are other reasons that will be in there, like in line with fuel. I think we don't want to bind it on the recommendation, but we will be able, in a public meeting, be able to say full council will be able to see it and will be able to scrutinise the decision, as will opposition.
Actually, yes, I do agree with Councillor Madwick. I do agree with him, and I think according the inflation, if there is anything like you need to add a staff, or there is any extra, so yes, that can be brought to the committee, and we can discuss this further. But I think better to go with the inflation rather than something static. Yes, that is going to increase. I think that will not be a better option.
Fair enough, but as I say, I think it covers the inflation bit in the report, and I think it covers anything that cost increases beyond our control in the recommendations. And as I said, it will come to a public. Officers can't set a price and I wave it through without anything happening. There has to be a justification for it. And as I said, as it's in house, we've got that. We've got those rules we abide by anyway. So I'm happy with it as it is. But I do understand where you're both coming from, is all I say. So if there any more comments or questions about it? In which case, then I'm happy to. There's three recommendations which I'm happy to sign off on. And thank you very much, everyone. It's the last formal meeting before Christmas, so happy Christmas if I don't see you before.